Welcome to Thought Frontier.
Ever feel like tech is leaving us in the dust? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into 3D printing. And let me tell you, this isn't just about some fancy new gadget.
It's about a fundamental shift, a whole new way of thinking about how we make things, how we design, how we create.
And to help us navigate this brave new world, we've got a stack of reports and articles. We'll be looking at a Congressional Research Service report to keep things unbiased, an insider perspective from 3D printing company EOS, and even an academic paper that dives into the societal changes this tech could bring. Imagine printing a wrench at home because you need to fix that leaky faucet. Is that still sci-fi, or is this something we should be prepping for?
It's closer than you might think, but before we get ahead of ourselves, let's break it down. What is 3D printing really?
Yeah, let's ditch the jargon and get to the good stuff.
Think of it like this, a high-tech cake decorator. But instead of frosting, it's building an object layer by layer from a digital blueprint. No more carving away, no more molds, just pure, precise layering.
So instead of chipping away at a hunk of metal, we're talking lasers, melting metal powder, or like extruding plastics with crazy detail.
Exactly. And that's where this additive approach, as they call it in the CRS report, really shines. Less waste, intricate designs we could only dream of before, and the cost effectiveness, especially for smaller batches, goes through the roof. Suddenly, prototyping and specialized parts, which used to cost an arm and a leg, become much more accessible.
Okay, so maybe no replicators from Star Trek just yet, but the EOS article had a crazy example. Ariane Group, the rocket scientists, used 3D printing to make a single engine part, one part, that used to be 248 separate pieces.
248 to 1. That's the revolution we're talking about here. This isn't some niche technology anymore. This has the potential to completely change how we approach manufacturing. Lighter parts for planes, custom prosthetics, printed on demand. The CRS report even talks about houses.
It makes traditional manufacturing seem, well, kind of ancient history, doesn't it?
Well, it's not about immediate replacement. The CRS report makes that clear. Where 3D printing excels is in those areas where traditional methods hit a wall. Those crazy complex shapes, one-off designs, small-scale production, things like medical implants, intricate tools, or prototypes for a new invention. Things that were either near impossible or ridiculously expensive before.
And the cost savings in those areas, that has to be massive.
Absolutely, but this is where things get really interesting. This academic paper we have, it really digs into this. When anyone, and I mean anyone, can print complex things locally, what happens to our global supply chains? What happens to intellectual property? What even is a factory anymore?
So we're talking like a whole power shift, right? From these big manufacturing giants to like everyone having the potential to become their own mini factory.
Exactly. The EOS article actually uses this term, the maker movement, and it's fascinating. These are entrepreneurs, individuals who can design and produce all in one place. It's really democratizing manufacturing in a way we haven't seen before.
Which is exciting, but also kind of, makes you think twice. Like, are we ready for this? That academic paper you mentioned, what does it say about navigating this whole new world?
It really emphasizes that with this amazing potential comes a responsibility, a need to really understand not just what 3D printing can do, but also its limitations. One thing it points out is that while the tech is advancing so rapidly, design is a bottleneck. Downloading a pre-made file is one thing, but being able to create something new, something innovative, that takes a whole other level of skill.
So it's not like we all run out, buy a 3D printer, and suddenly we're all inventors.
Right, not quite. The EOS article, it talks about how this is creating a whole new kind of entrepreneur, someone who is a designer and a manufacturer in one. They even call them digital artisans, which I love. This blend of artistry and technical expertise, it's really next-level stuff.
Digital artisans, I like that. Okay, but before we go full-on future, let's reel it back in. You mentioned limitations. What are some of the biggest hurdles 3D printing still needs to clear?
The CRS report is great about this. It's very level-headed and points out things like quality control, cybersecurity, speed. For example, while 3D printing can create some amazingly detailed objects, they don't always have that same consistency as those made by traditional methods.
So you're not suggesting we start 3D printing like bridges or anything just yet?
Well, not without some very, very rigorous testing first. And that's another key point. The CRS report talks about how while we're seeing 3D printed houses, scaling that up to things like bridges or skyscrapers, that's a whole other challenge. And speed is a factor. For mass production, traditional methods often still win out in terms of, well, speed and cost. It's really in those specialized, customized areas where 3D printing shines.
That makes sense. You mentioned cybersecurity. What are we talking about there? What are the risks?
Think about it. You're sending a digital blueprint to a machine that then builds something, atom by atom. If those designs get into the wrong hands,
Counterfeit goods, faulty parts, maybe even weapons, all being printed under the radar.
exactly. And that's not even considering the potential for hacking the printers themselves. Imagine causing a malfunction, creating a defective product on purpose. The CRS report mentions that even the Department of Defense, and they're big proponents of 3D printing, they're investing heavily in cybersecurity for exactly this reason. It's a real vulnerability.
So maybe not all smooth sailing then. Definitely some serious challenges alongside all this opportunity.
Absolutely. And this is where it becomes really crucial to have collaboration. Governments, industry leaders, researchers, all working together to, I don't know, set standards, develop those security protocols, figure out how to regulate this whole landscape, which is tricky, especially with how fast the tech is evolving.
It's like trying to hit a moving target, right? But here's the thing. What does this all mean for, like, the average person? What are we supposed to take away from all of this?
The CRS report, I think it sums it up perfectly, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, but challenges and opportunities. 3D printing is disruptive
Yeah.
in both good ways and potentially negative ways. It's really up to us to figure out how to harness it responsibly.
Challenges and opportunities, huh? It's like we're standing at the edge of, I don't know, like a tech frontier or something, and we've got this tool, this amazing tool that could completely reshape how we do, well, everything.
And just like, those pioneers in the history books, we've got a choice to make here. Are we going to just rush in blindly? Or are we going to be smart about it? Excited but cautious, really thinking through what each step means, what the consequences might be.
And that's what really got me. Going through all these sources, this isn't just a tech revolution, it's a societal one. It's making us rethink how we make things, who gets to make them, and what it all means for our jobs, the economy, even the planet.
Exactly. And that's where this academic paper gets really interesting. It paints this picture of a future where manufacturing is like decentralized. Imagine instead these massive factories, you've got local workshops, community hubs, all printing custom products right then and there on demand.
So we're talking about like a reverse globalization almost. Instead of a plastic toy being shipped across the ocean, you're sending a digital file across town.
And that has some mind-blowing implications. The CRS report even talks about how governments are already wrestling with how to even define this, how to classify and tax 3D printed goods. Is it a service, a product? Is it something totally new? We don't even know.
And what about intellectual property? If anyone can hit print and copy a design, I mean, where does that leave us?
Million-dollar questions. And honestly, we don't have all the answers. That's why these conversations right here, right now, are so important. We need to be thinking about these things, the complexities, the potential downsides, before we get in too deep.
So after digging into all this, 3D printing, it's clearly got the potential to change the world, but not without, a good dose of responsibility.
It's about balance, right? Embracing the opportunities, and there are a ton, but also acknowledging the risks and mitigating them, being smart about it.
Because at the end of the day, it's just a tool, right? 3D printing. It's up to us to decide how we use it, how we want to shape the future with it.
Will be used to, empower people, strengthen our communities, create a world that's more sustainable. Or will we let it widen the gaps we already have, create even more problems?
Those are the questions we all need to be asking. And that brings us to our final provocative thought for today. As 3D printing becomes more accessible, more affordable, more commonplace, the question for you is this:
What will you create with it?
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We'll catch you next time when we explore.